hi everyone. We are here to talk a little bit about GTFO, specifically about the GTFO levels that we, the lovely level design crew, made, painstakingly, very patiently worked on for a few years, months, even days. And also together with us, we have some speedrunners that have knowledge about our levels to an insane degree, maybe even more than we do, which is scary and hilarious and many other things. So yeah, we are here to let y'all give us some questions about our levels. You get the freedom of just going at it, asking us whatever you might have questions about in terms of what we made and why we did the things we did and how we did them. I think we're just going to pass the mic along and just do a little simple Q&A kind of.
Do we want to introduce ourselves?
Yes, let's do an introduction. That's a very good idea.
I'm DGB. I'm quite a new speedrunner and don't really have that much knowledge on each level, but I do have a few questions about why some decisions were made and what the intended ways to complete a certain few levels.
I bet you do.
I'm Frosty. I'm also quite a new speedrunner. I haven't been around for as long as these guys. I'm all the way here from Australia, so it's a long trip. But yeah, I've got a few burning questions for you guys, just like hot ones. No hot sauce though.
Oh, I'm Mac. I've been playing for a long time, since R1. I started speedrunning around Rundown 3, and I don't particularly remember any specific levels past Rundown 4 because I have a horrible memory, but I've got a lot of questions about just the general design process, as well as a few questions from the main GTFO Discord server.
And I'm Kenny. I've been playing the game the longest here. I think I initially played the network alpha test. So yeah, I've been here a long time, and I've been speedrunning the game since Rundown R1A1. So yeah, I've got a bit of knowledge and game experience, and yeah, I could ask a question or two about the game.
Now I'm really getting nervous.
I got a good question to start off with.
Hold on, they haven't introduced themselves yet.
Oh yeah,
Didn't they already do that?
did we? I mean, we are level designers. We can just let them say a few words.
I was gonna say, I think it might be good if you introduce yourself and say what your favorite level you made is.
Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do that. I love this improvisational thing. All right. Yes. So my name is Vladimir, or Vlad. I am a level designer. And my favorite level that I've made so far is probably Rundown 8B2. I put a lot of work into that one. If you have any questions about that one, feel free to ask. I probably have a lot of things to say there. Yeah. Jonathan.
Yes. I'm level design, Jonathan. Favorite level. Think it's R7D2. It's the most enjoyable I've had, or level I've had. Did that over 4 days. So yeah, but that was fun.
Andreas, I've been working with GTFO since Rundown 7, and I think because it's the first one, it becomes a bit of a special one. I think I need to say R7B3.
Hello, I'm Lena, also level designer, obviously. I'm the newest person on the team, so I only worked on Rundown 8. I think my favorite one was probably R8B4, which was also my first level I ever made for GTFO. Yeah.
I have a question for you first. So, because B4 was your first level, the difficulty of it was definitely extreme when it first came out. Mm-hmm. Did you overestimate how difficult the game was with that first level, and that's why it was so difficult?
Yeah, I think, for example, one of the things being new to a game is just kind of figuring out all of the things like balancing and all that stuff. That was probably one of the more difficult things for me, at least as a level designer, just kind of understanding what does a B or a B level mean in regards of difficulty. But I kind of got told, it's not really a B level, it's more of a C tier level because of the how we kind of set everything up for this specific rundown. So I was like, okay, well, let's just go maybe a bit more difficult. But I think it got way too difficult and got kind of extreme. And that was kind of maybe a bit of a mistake there, just kind of trying to figure out the difficulty in general. But it was amazing that we had some awesome people that could give feedback and just basically tell me like, hey, so this is kind of insane, please kind of fix it. And I mean, and then because of that, I managed to actually make it way more balanced and make it work way more. So that was kind of, like a trial and error thing, I think, on my part. And I mean, I'm happy that I learned my lesson. I think the other levels turned out to be more balanced. But yeah, it was kind of fun though, seeing people I think someone wrote in the Discord chat, like the person who made B4 is Satan. And I was like, cool, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, because the level got like heavily nerfed after later iterations. Like the fog got changed, the enemy spawns got like halved. It was like crazy. I didn't even play the level until those nerfs because I was so scared of it.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But GTFO, it's a hard game, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a bit of an interesting time, I guess. So I'm very happy about like all the feedback I got, which definitely made it way more like better and appropriate, I guess, for like what it should be. But yeah, it was. I hope you guys had some fun at least when it was like horrible and insane.
So, R7D1, were the class 10 alarms intended to scare off the players, or were they intended to be completable back to back?
The idea with those two alarms, or the class 10 alarms there, was to kind of do what I did in R6D1 with the entire reactor skip. R7D1 is a very long level if you do all of it. But I figured there would be people that both in the interest of speedrunning, but also just test if they could break that 10 alarm, because it's nothing we'd done before. So it was more, I knew it was like there's enough ammo, there's enough or like the room itself where that alarm takes place, you can do it. But it was more like the intention is players get there, see that alarm, go, oh fuck, do we try this or do we just do the other things? Like the other things should be easier the rest of the level. That was always the intention. And that's basically it. Offer up that flexibility of how you wanted to play.
I just want to add on to that one. For the full zone alarm, was it intended to be able to skip that entirely, because the deactivate alarm command is on the same terminal as starting that one? So you can just start the full zone and then stop it straight away on the same terminal. And the same thing, you can go pull one of the class 10 alarms and then just deactivate it with that terminal.
You set up that one, right?
I did. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah.
Actually, that one is super. That one was such a bother to set up. Like the thing was that getting to the zone scan, as we call it, that had you go through an error alarm, so you're being chased and all that. The way the error alarm works, just like from a functionality standpoint, is a bit different. Like it's different enough to how we set up the zone scan triggering. Combining those two was not something we could do easily then. Because the command that turned off the error alarm would appear automatically. I couldn't just remove it and have it be replaced with the one that starts the zone scan, right? So they both had to be there. And I just think we never really got it to work properly. They were just both there. Or do you remember more?
I think a big thing, and that's something that started in all of, with this group joining 10 Chambers, basically, because in the beginning, Henke and Ludwig and whoever else helped out. The game was being made, they needed a new feature, and that feature could be added. When we came in, we were at the beginning of the end for GTFO, and we couldn't as easily add new features just because we wanted to do something funny in one level. So we started kind of breaking the game to be able to make it do what we wanted to happen. This leads to a lot of circumstances like this. We have one system that desperately wants the game to function in a specific way, and we wanted something else to happen. It was just difficult sometimes to see how those things interact with each other until a lot of players started playing it. The bug hunters was one thing because they knew how we intended the levels to be played because we can have different conversations with them. When new players that hadn't really been a part of that that team that hadn't talked to us in the same way and knew what we were trying to do came and saw the possibilities of what you could do, that's when a lot of these more finicky things started showing up. So yeah, as he said, it was difficult to get certain things to work the way we wanted to, and sometimes they slip through. This is 100% one of those. R7 D1 was a challenging level to create.
What he said.
All right. One of the questions from the people in the community is on R7E1. How this one's not a bad one.
Okay.
It was how did you treat Pablo, as we call him, or the Immortal? How did you balance him around the tiles in the level?
Balancing?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah. Balancing.
I know, I'm joking. No, but how did I balance him? Well, that was really hard. First of all, I had very lofty ideas about how we were going to handle, as we call him here, Frank the Tank.
Yeah, we call him Pablo.
Yeah, Pablo or like Immortal, just straight up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Frank the Tank internally. The level was even called like Frank the Tank at one point.
Yeah.
I think someone from Delivery even called it Frank the Tank with the shank.
In the community, we already called Giants Franks, so that was taken.
Right. Well, we didn't know about that, so. But how I tried to balance Frank, or I did, that was rough because Rundown 7 was a very intense rundown to work on from all of us, but at that point, I had to make sure the Rundown 7 D1 worked in the parts of the level that were the most intricate to create. Jonathan, as he talked about the whole thing about wanting to do very custom things and new experimental stuff, the whole part where you do the whole, baby trolley thing section, you know what I'm talking about, I assume. That was hell to set up from my end. It took a lot of time, not to go into specifics, but it was just a lot of work. And trying to make that work while trying to balance Frank, it was two very experimental things, and one thing simply didn't get enough time for the balancing. First of all, when I first had Frank spawn into the level, it was very rough. It was even it was much worse, if you can believe it. So it was basically just a lot of answers to these questions are probably gonna boil down to the same thing. It was a lack of time thing. I wish I would have balanced more. I know there are ways it could have balanced it more, but once again, it was an experimental thing, and those things take time. Time we simply didn't have at that point, so it is what it is.
I'm gonna ask some more broader questions, I reckon.
Okay.
About more the philosophy and how you got into level design in the first place. So yeah, what's your favorite thing about actually designing the levels? Seeing it completed and played by the player base itself, or just getting in there and making something just completely unique? Yeah, what's your main driving force?
That's a question that has many answers, honestly, for me. You mentioned seeing the community reactions. That's for sure one of the best parts. Honestly, not just the positive parts, but also the negative parts as well, because you learn so much from it. But I think the parts where I had the most fun, that's definitely those, I don't know if I want to call them light bulb moments, more I'm feeling some type of inner inferno going on where I'm wow, everyone's going to hate this. I love this idea. And by hate, I mean this is gonna be evil, straight up. One of the best parts about having worked on the GTFO levels is those moments where you're like, this is gonna be hilarious to see people play. I know some people are gonna hate it, but I know a lot of people are gonna love it. Let's give it a try and see what delivery thinks. And we just send it away and see how it goes. Like those little moments of like, yeah, let's go.
So most level designers, I'd say, have a vision for what their level is intended to be. And for me, that best feeling is the first time you really you get the feelings that you have an idea that this is what I want players to experience when they get it. Like if it's a room or if it's an event, whatever it is. But the first time you see that can be so far in that it's when the players actually get it the first time, but it can also be just the first time you test it together. Like the first time I did when I was working on R6, the D1 with the boss, when we properly got it to show up at the right time, when we got the events and all the effects start coming, it was a cool moment. It's those moments that feel the best when you see the puzzle start coming together.
I think for me, I've been working at a few places before I came to 10 Chambers and GTFO, and I think what I had most fun with was like the actual system, getting to understand to start with how the system of us building levels worked, and this randomness and the generation of levels was for me the coolest thing. So I'm not talking about like now specifically what I love with it. It was just like getting to know how we make levels here, and building all these we call them geos, and seeing how they get put together when the level is generated was to me a wow and a fun moment for me. So that was my thing.
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably like finding like the uniqueness, right? Which was a very difficult thing, I guess, because when I came in, I mean, it was like more like 70 plus levels or something. And it's like, okay, I have to create something that, maybe stands out. So it was a lot of like research, just asking the people in my team, just kind of like, just trying to figure out like what has not been done before. And I think like maybe what was maybe a bit of a difficulty for us, the entire team, was that I think Rundown 8, we didn't have a lot of extra things added, right? It was like some enemies that were a bit tweaked and kind of new. Mostly, if I'm not, if I'm correct. So that is like what I thought was like very fun to just kind of like, okay, what can I create that is maybe like a new take on something, or like that people would get excited about and feel like, this is fresh and this is cool. And that is always like really awesome to get into. It's usually a challenge, right? Like you look at all the mechanics that you have and you're like, okay, like what can I actually play around with here to create something new? And I think that is just generally what I think is really fun with level design. Just make sure that like what you're creating also works very well with what the game actually is. And then I think, I don't know, I made, for example, with the R8B4, like my geo there, where you are actually lowering the fog. Like I also customized the entire thing, like that entire level or like that entire geo. And that is also such a cool thing. Like you're creating this scenario, but then you're also building a customized like room for it, which is like super cool. So you're really making sure that that feels like very tight and awesome. So I think that's one of my favorite parts.
I've got another question here. I really wish I thought of it because it's a great question. But how many different other teams do you guys talk with while you're building your levels?
It has depended from rundown to rundown. Rundown 6, I was with D1 because the boss was such a unique thing. I was in contact with all of the teams. We needed audio, we needed VFX, we needed graphics, code support, everything. But generally, I'd say we are, in contact with art, parts of code, delivery, and narrative. So it is most things. I mean, level design is a kind of a boiling pot. We sit at the end and take everything that the game theoretically is and put it together into one. We are at the end of content creation, and sure, we can't do anything without the rest of the teams, but we are the ones that put everything together. So we are very often in contact with pretty much everyone. There's maybe back end and things like that we don't roll with too much, but that's just because we do such different things.
Just to add a little bit to that, it also depends a little bit more as well from level to level. Like I worked on a mid tutorial level, for example, and that was one that needed an extra pair, a lot more eyes than usual to really make everything work. Needed some extra input from narrative, some extra input from sound as well to make really everything work. And yeah, levels like the tutorial and the R6D1 with the very custom boss fight and all that, those types of levels require more manpower. So yeah, it also depends a little bit from level to level. Yeah.
So for me, I worked mostly with, for example, narrative and delivery, and some arts. But something that's also very interesting, being a level designer, when it comes to like when you're creating assets for specific scenarios, like in the C2, R8 C2, there was this MRI machine thing that was in the center of the room. That was something that I had to like go back and forth with art to just make sure that like, is it the correct size? Like, how does it work? Like when you're actually playing, like when you're in the level and you're like playing around that specific asset, like does it work properly? How does it work with sightlines? Do we want like some covers on the specific asset to make it, like there's a lot of things going into certain things, and just that specific asset was like a very back and forth process, which is very interesting. And I think a lot of people don't really know, like, that we work very much with like all of the different departments. But this is just what makes the job very fun.
How do you guys feel about the community taking your levels and your geodes and all that kind of stuff and making new things such as like modded levels and modded rundowns out of that kind of thing? And how do you feel about that whole community and what they've created?
It will probably be pretty short, but like for me, like I have no issue with it at all. I just think it's like super fun when you actually have a community that is like very creative and actually wants to like, continue doing fun things with what you worked on. No, but so for me, it's just like super fun to see like the actual community being creative and see like what are they doing. So yeah, like I don't have any problem with it personally.
Yeah, I wish I've had more time to actually play through some of the modded content. I would have loved to see that. And for me, it does feel like maybe, I don't know if it's intention from the start, but it does feel to some extent like a proper tribute to see people make new stuff with the levels and mechanics and whatnot that you've worked on and made and etc. So for me, just super fun. I love that stuff. You wanna add something?
I mean, I can just say, yeah, no, I think it's great. I love that people can use the stuff that we've created, because especially now that the game has been put to rest, as it were, it's fantastic that people can, they have such a passion for the game that they want to keep it going. And if our old stuff can still be used and it creates more enjoyable moments, then that's absolutely great.
So, in R71, was Brazil skip intended?
Brazil skip was never intended, but I love that it exists. Oh, should we explain what it is? Okay,
So,
do you want to explain it? Okay, please. Sure. As the person who unintendedly designed Brazil skip in Rundown 7 E1, there's this part in E1 where you do this like zone scan fight. And at the end of the zone scan, you get sent to a dimension, and this dimension is now called Brazil. And this dimension has like some stealth action going on and a larger fight and stuff like that. You get chased by Frank again in Brazil because he follows you to Brazil. He had a plane ticket, it seems like, so he's there. Apparently, if you just decide to never really finish the zone scan. I think that's the thing, yeah. You can just go further into the level and still have all the enemies keep spawning, making the level a lot harder, but it's possible, and you do technically skip Brazil. So that is the famous Brazil skip of Rundown 7 E1. And once again, it was never intended, but it's great that it exists.
While we're here, do you want to talk a little bit about the cursed tutorial in Rundown 8A2?
Oh boy, do I. What do you want to know?
Well, I guess we'll go with the method of finding the codes, like the secret way to get in, and then also the design of why you chose to put what you did in the special tutorial.
Of course. Well, for me personally, I've always been a big fan of like secrets and Easter eggs in games. Really been hooked on that entire thing since I was a kid. So I wanted to do my own take on that. And having seen what they did with the secret ending in Payday really made me inspired, because it's like, wow, can you really do this kind of stuff? This super intricate stuff in a like cooperative multiplayer shooter game. So yeah, I decided to try it out. But the thing is, this was like a super long process to really convince people to allow me to do this. Like I mentioned it to Henke like a few times, and Henke, our boss or level design director, and he just laughed about it. You know, like, yeah, okay, that could be fun, but keep working, whatever. And then I just like kept dreaming on about different stuff you could add, and he just kept laughing about it. And then I went to Marcus, one of my gameplay programmers, and then he got pumped up and he started talking about it. And then later I went to Henke again. I was like, hey, Marcus is also on board. We should do this thing. He's like, oh, okay. And it was just a process. It kept going. And when Rundown 8 finally, it was time to create Rundown 8, and I had no idea of what I wanted to put into the secondary layer of A2. It's like, why not just take this opportunity and make a super cursed secret thing? So yeah, it was just a long process of trying to get people on board.
Passion project.
Yeah, passion project. Yeah, for sure. I do wish that I managed to make the whole secret thing a bit more intricate, because now it's just like you go to B2 and you find the codes and then go back. Like if you know how to find it, it is what it is. If I had more time, once again, the whole time thing, I would have made it much more intricate and maybe have it be like spread out over all the rundowns, and it's a real needle in a haystack thing. It is what it is. Maybe in the future I'll get some more crazy ideas and be able to do something similar. We'll see. But yeah, it was a passion project for sure.
So you also did the tutorial, correct? Like the normal tutorial?
Yes, I did the normal tutorial.
What was the decision to make the one terminal in there have only the ping command? Because I feel like it doesn't teach the players anything to do with the terminal.
I'll go back to what Jonathan said about us wanting to do very specific things and then not being able to do said very specific things. Trying to teach all the mechanics of GTFO, a game that is very unique in its mechanics, is tricky, especially when you're working with tools and systems that are very tricky to use, once again, with these custom things. So we just tried to do what we could in terms of making it feel like it contains a lot of teaching moments. Removing the commands from the terminal, that was just an idea of like, let's not try to overwhelm them with all these other commands that exist there. Let's just try to teach them the ping thing first. It could have been maybe better implemented, because now you have to go out of the terminal and see the ping marker after you type ping. It's a bit wonky, but it is what it is, right? Like the thought was that we try to teach as much as we can with tutorial, and then let our Rundown 7 A1 teach the rest. But then we released all the other levels. And some A1 or other A levels are much more tricky than Rundown 7 A1. So it just kind of is what it is. Maybe it's better to watch some YouTube videos or something to really get taught of all the mechanics and stuff. But yeah, we did what we could with the limited time.
This is about R8E2. So in past the second class 6 OARM, if you know, the one that spawns the P-mum at the end of it, some of the rooms on those like 2 zones, they're like they can change those like the rooms, like say in the Kraken zone, that first small room that you go into, it can change. Is that intended?
So not entirely, no. The thing is, the Kraken room itself is it breaks pretty much every rule our level gen system has in place to make it work, and that kind of cascades into the rest of the level. For example, flyers can spawn inside of the Kraken room, but nothing else can really properly do it. We had, for a long time, there was a snatcher who was supposed to come in during the fight and mess around with you. But the problem we had was that he would run in, grab someone, and then it couldn't actually release you inside of the Kraken room. So it would run to the closest place where it could, which was the center zone. When you get to this little cross section, you either go to the Reactor or the Kraken room. So it would just run away with you for 2 minutes. Long story short, the Kraken room breaks the level gen.
Did you think about leaving it in because it's funny?
I wanted to, but I was not allowed to.
That's
I
disappointing.
almost got it through, and then there was a second, like I talked to Henrik, and you're like, yeah, I mean, sure. Well, it's a bit funny. And I was like, I don't think players that gets there will have an issue with the snatcher. So we were like, okay, all approved, let's go. We sent it through, and then delivery got a hand of it and was like, no, we're not letting this go through.
I feel like it would have been a good punishment for players that get that far and still stuff it up.
Yeah.
Like it's only one player. Like they just get dragged 2 minutes away from the fight. I don't know. I'm on your board. I agree with you there.
We talked a little bit earlier about the error scans or trap scans or whatever you guys want to call them, that you guys had more plans with them. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because most people just spawn the one tank and then avoid them like hell.
You're referring to E2, the trap scans there in the Reactor.
Just in general,
Yeah.
all of the trap scans.
I mean, I'm going to let Vlad here take over in a second, as he was the mastermind behind them. But in E2, we had a lot of ideas of how we wanted to use them, because mostly we saw E2 as kind of playground. The E levels have always been, what they kind of do is that you are allowed to try things that none of the other levels can really do. You get to push them as far as possible. And E2 being the final level of the game, we're just like, okay, well, let's see what we can really push through here. So, I mean, we discussed having every single one of the scans teleporting you to a new dimension, having them randomized so you get to different places, like teleporting you around in the level. There was a lot of things that we could theoretically do with them, but it was a simple stability and time issue. Both, how do we keep these things from breaking the game every single time you try to mess with them, and how do we actually have time to make all of these ideas feel good? Because it's one thing to just implement something and it's like, oh, this works. There's another thing, well, will it actually feel good when you are playing? Is it fun or understandable to run into one of these things and then just be in another level for a few minutes? Maybe, but it could also break the flow.
Yeah, and one thing about you call them trap scans, I used to call them corrupted scans, but it's the same thing. Okay, just the mechanic itself was so like cobbled together by me. It's essentially just a trigger box and some scan graphics that I tweaked a bit in the shaders. It's nothing crazy in that sense. But just the fact that it is a completely new environmental trap or hazard, and it had never been tested before. It was like supposed to only be run on 8D1. We happened to realize through the bug hunters and delivery that it was a pretty fun mechanic, and I saw that some of the bug hunters were like, "Oh, you should totally have this." No, they were even assuming that it would appear in more levels, because they hadn't gotten that. It was during a time where they only had got like 3 levels to test or something. So they're like, "Oh, I can't wait to see it appear in like in the E levels." So for me, it was like, okay, I guess I have to do this now. And the way it was set up from the beginning was super janky. And the tricky part was that it was made so far ahead into development of Rundown 8 that we had no time to really like ask for help from the programmers to like make it into a proper mechanic or a system or like have it be properly coded or made. So all of the levels have this super janky version of the corrupted scan, which made it take even longer to really make it work in E2, for example. Like I would have loved to go completely nuts with them in E2, or honestly any other level. So tying back to the whole like modding community thing, I'd love to see more of like what the modding community does with them, to see what they could have done or can do what we never had the chance to do. So
one of the questions from the community was, did you know they could be used for, they said, nefarious purposes?
Purposes.
Which I don't know too much about that, but I assume it's despawning enemies, or no?
So when you teleport, it deactivates all alarms.
Right.
So you can purposely use the one, because you guys said earlier when we talked that the idea in the reactor zone was to have the 3 in the first zone that unlocks to teleport you to a different dimension every time, but you only got to the first one, while the second and third one just spawn the tanks.
Yeah.
You can use that to purposely deactivate the alarm that leads into the Kraken room.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're totally unaware about that whole fact.
No, totally planned. Yeah, that was.
Totally planned.
I'm happy you found the exploit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I had no idea. So many things of GTFO development is just funny, happy accidents.
And in that same room, did you guys know it's possible to parkour from the edges up onto the railing? Was that intentional?
Do you remember? Oh, yeah, you're looking at me, I guess.
I didn't make that. I didn't make that room. That was all him. I knew at the very end when we were releasing it, but at that point it was too late to do anything about it. But yeah, so yes and no, we knew.
Do you guys not only like your own levels, but like all of the levels? Do you ever look back at how they were designed or aspects of them and think like, oh, this would have been cool in that level, or I should have implemented that in like my level, or you know, this should have been changed, blah blah blah. And do you ever like do that? I don't know, just in your free time or whenever you look back at things?
Yeah, I've looked at all. I did it very much in the beginning because I needed to get a better feel for how the game played. That's why one of my first levels was survival, because I looked at R5B4 and I was like, I like the idea of this level, but I wonder if I can do it in another way, if there is a different way to really get the most out of what this objective is trying to do. And after that, I mean, I felt it's always important, Lena mentioned this before, how do you get a mechanic to, or a level to feel good within the game? Because it's one thing designing a level, it's another thing designing a level for a specific game to get a feel of what is it that makes this game's mechanics really come to life. So going back and looking at older levels and seeing, okay, now we have more mechanics, we have more advanced tools. Is there anything from these levels that, like, okay, I know that the community really likes this, could I get a new spin on this? Or is there some ideas from here that worked then that I maybe can use to raise the enjoyment of what I'm trying to do now? So from my point of view, yes, I did it a fair amount to try to keep that feel.
I would have added infectious fog in all the other levels, just everywhere, fill them.
That's evil. That's so evil.
Nah, it's
dead game.
I know it would be appropriate, the best thing to do. So, yeah, I'm actually gonna talk to Ulf a bit later about that, I think.
Linking to that, was R8C2 inspired by R7C2?
Who made that one? Who made C2? Maybe that was Henke.
I guess the fact that we don't know who made it makes it apparent that it maybe wasn't inspired. But you did look at a lot of levels. I remember you did your research. Yeah.
If I recall, I think at one point it was mentioned that we wanted to maybe look into because in C2 or R8 C2 you take these batteries, right? Is that what you mean, like that specific part, and you go into like the center of the level, like the hub in a way, and then you put in the power cells, and then there's like events happening?
Yes, it's the idea that you get cells, something happens whilst getting the cells to the generator or after you put them into the generator.
Wait, so R7 C2, was that the one where it's like this kind of like a hub that is like a pit that kind of goes down like this? Yes. I was inspired by that one. I was like, it's so hard to like go back because I don't remember certain things. But yeah, I do. I played that one, and I remember that I really liked the entire, just the design of it. And I wanted to kind of create my own spin on it, I guess. I thought it was a super cool thing. So I just wanted to kind of see if we could make something else with it. It's probably one of my favorite levels to play, actually, now when I realize. Yeah.
I do have one more question about R82 though. Why the team scans in the reactor?
Which ones are you referring to?
On the reactor, when you need to code search, on each code search there is one team scan.
There was a reason, right?
Yeah, no, we had a reason. Mostly, it's a little bit hazy because I did a lot of things during that time, but if I remember correctly, the reason I had was because I wanted to stop players from trying to rush out of the reactor zone. The level is intended to be played. Sure, you can choose to either do the Kraken or the reactor first. Now I've heard with the teleporting and things like that you can break a lot of things anyway, but I wanted you to kind of have to go back. I didn't want players to be spread all over, because what can happen with the spawns then is that they start spreading out over the level. As the level was so volatile as it was with the Kraken room, that had a habit of breaking things. So I just wanted to try to keep people contained.
Yeah, there's a lot of people disappointed about that one. In the community, as the speedrun community mostly, we want to do Reactor and Kraken at the same time, but you can do it now. It's just really hard because when you're in the Kraken, Reactor waves spawn on top of you, and you could just be fighting the Kraken and there's a tank right next to me. So
yeah. It was for stability reasons as far as I remember it.
Do you guys enjoy watching the speedrunners like break your levels, or do you like fear it? Or what's your general feelings when you like see like a run of your level that's just completely just blitzing fast?
I think it's just like super fun, right? To just like see like what you guys can use in your favor to just like finish it as fast as possible, because I'm super slow at playing the game. Like it takes me a while to go through a level, so it's just like extremely cool to see what you guys are doing. So I don't mind you guys kind of like cheating the systems and I don't know what. So like finding things like, oh yeah, if I do this, then I kind of break this entire thing. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm okay with that, I guess. So for me, it's it's like the same with like the community kind of creating like their own stuff. Like it's just a creative way of playing the game. So I just think it's like really cool to just watch, I guess. Want to add?
Yeah, speedruns definitely, but also generally, I mean, it's always super fun to. I remember I had YouTube on for the first week after release, just watching stuff all the time, people reacting and playing. It's really gratifying when you've done something.
I feel it's going to be the same question or answer over and over again. I love watching you say it. There is the feeling of like when somebody breaks your level. Like I love it, but it's also like, but you're not supposed to play it that way. But it's fun to see the things that you didn't ever expect happening being done in specific ways. It's really fun.
Yeah, no, I hate it. Play slower. But it's super fun. It's fun also when you're designing a specific environment and you know what cracks exist in, let's say, a custom geomorph or whatnot. And you just know, like, okay, someone's probably going to exploit this in some way. It is what it is. Let them have their fun. So we are aware that people are going to break your stuff from very early on. So just fun to see you guys find them and a dozen more.
Real quick, one last question from the community about everyone's favorite level to pick and prod at E2.
R8 E2.
Yes.
Yeah. No,
yes.
only E2. Yeah. Oh, the other one.
Why is the reactor a forced secondary when R61 also has a reactor that isn't forced secondary?
Simple reason is that how the system is set up, to be able to do main objectives, you need layers. Like there can be one main objective per layer. The main objective of E2 is a survival objective. To get the reactor in, I had to do a secondary. There was no other way to do it. D1 technically doesn't have two objectives. It is a reactor. Well, D1 is actually a hack to get the reactor to work the way it's doing, but it only has one main objective, really. The boss, that entire thing is kind of its own custom scenario. And I couldn't do that with E2, so forced secondary it was.
Guys, thank you super much.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, this was awesome. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah, we'll be back. Yeah,
Same time next year.
Same time next year, yeah.
we'll be back for the Den of Wolves competition.
Whoa.